Welcome to Maine, we're stretched to the bone. Prices keep rising, the paycheck stays prone. Inflation keeps knocking, won't leave us alone. They're selling the lie, groceries climbing, the gas tank is low. The bill's hitting harder than snow, but silence still blankets the truth. Where does it go? They're selling the lie. Housing is gridlocked from Portland to the county. Workers commute far past what feels soundly. Talk of solution comes yearly, not loudly. They're selling the lie.
Welcome to the Muddy Waters Podcast, where Mainers tell their stories, unfiltered.
Good afternoon, Maine. This is Chuck Ellis, and I am the host of the Muddy Waters Podcast. The Muddy Waters Podcast exists not in order to muddy the water, but because the waters are so muddy, in large part because the mainstream media has become a propaganda arm of the Democrat Party. They don't do their job. They don't tell you what's going on in your backyard. They try to keep you focused on what's happening in Washington, D.C., or Iran, or Ukraine, or wherever it might be, other than the things that have the most impact on your life, which is what's happening in your local community, in your backyard, in your state. State policy and local and town and city policies have much more of an impact on your life, but they don't want to focus on that. So we try to interview people from around the state to let you know what's happening here in Maine on the ground, and both from students, as we're going to be dealing with, as well as legislators and candidates and business owners and moms and dads with their real stories about what is happening in our world. So today we are fortunate to have with us Robert Joseph Reed, who is the president of Young Americans for Liberty at Thomas College. Thanks for joining us, Robert.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me today. It's an absolute honor.
Yeah. Well, I was really excited when a friend of mine, Alan, connected me with you and let me know that there was something going on our college campuses. I'm always excited to hear of, I think, and many of us are in the conservative movement, to hear of younger people who are leaning right, because so much of the youth have been indoctrinated by the education system, unfortunately, and lean left because they've been manipulated by the people that they were supposed to be able to trust. And so it's exciting to find young people sticking out and pushing back against that narrative and that trend. We know leading into 2024 that a lot of our younger men, especially in that leading up to that point, are starting to push more conservatively. So it's exciting, and we love to hear from people and hear about what's going on. So I'll shut up and let you talk about who are you, where do you come from, what's your story, background. Take as much time as you want, and what are you doing at Thomas College, and then we'll go from there.
Well, my name is obviously Robert Joseph Reed. I was born in Lewiston, but I grew up in Livermore Falls. I was at a household with a single mother and 3 other kids, so busy house. And around middle school, I moved with my grandparents, and that's really where my political beliefs began to shape, was living with my grandparents, because right around that time, COVID hit. And when COVID-19 hit, my grandparents always taught me to be skeptical of these things. Someone's always trying to pull the wool over your eyes on something, trying to get your money. So you always got to pay attention, look closely. And I just never bought the whole, bat marketplace story, that it just naturally started spreading out of the blue. And I was told by a lot of people in power above me, a lot of my educators and even family members, that no, that's a conspiratorial way of thinking. You need to listen to the experts. They know what's best for you. So we're going to stay inside. You're not going to see your friends. You're not going to see your family for a couple of weeks. We're going to smooth it over. And then the couple of weeks turn into months. A couple months turn into a year of masking and lockdowns. And it just kept going. And then all these questions started to pop up about, what the actual origin of this virus was. And I, especially in recent time, I feel very vindicated with a lot of the news that's come out, especially with the Rand Paul Fauci exchange, or the lack of content thereof speaks volumes.
Hearing Rand Paul, I really have, since COVID began, just loved any time I could listen to Rand Paul talk to Anthony Fauci, because he has like spelled it out pretty obviously and clearly, and Fauci just lies through his teeth when he does speak and doesn't say, I plead the fifth, I plead the fifth, I plead the fifth. It's like, anyway, but
But I moved here to Waterville in high school, and I got with the Waterville High School debate team because I'm a really big fan of civil discourse and political engagement. I think one of the main reasons why young people these days feel like they can't get involved in politics is because they feel like they can't talk about it openly with each other, and they feel like they can't intellectually, honestly have these discussions without being ostracized or alienated by different groups of people. And so when I was in debate, I made a conscious effort to bring other people into the conversation who weren't necessarily part of the debate team. Like I would throw my ideas around. I would give speeches during lunch. I would ask people like, hey, like, how do you feel about this? Like, we talk about this subject matter. And naturally, through my learning and through my discussing with people, I came to an understanding of myself politically, and I find myself to lean generally conservatively and economically very libertarian. And so that eventually led me to here at Thomas College, founding and being the president of Young Americans for Liberty. It's an organization focused on three principles at its core: civil liberties, limited government, and free markets. And the slogan of "Don't hurt people, don't take their stuff."
that's the opposite of the Marxist ideology.
Yeah.
Like property is theft, I think they think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So don't take people's stuff. Yeah, I like it. Don't hurt people. Don't take people's stuff. So awesome. So when did you? How recently did you start going to Thomas College?
So I am a now second year at Thomas College. I just finished my first year. So I started in 2025. And ever since, I found it to be a great community and a very good breeding ground for political discussion because of its small size, as well as its like skew of beliefs. I know College Republicans has been here for a while, and I've worked with them, worked with Peyton as well. I know, you know, Peyton Warren.
Yeah.
And here with YAL, I'm hoping to open that discourse further, create more opportunities for people to talk and platform free market ideas, especially in an environment here in Maine where those ideas have been challenged by organizations like the DSA.
Yeah, and administrations and school systems, and like it's challenged at many universities and colleges across the state, where, and even like high schools, where people are trying to start like I would say, I wouldn't call this a sister organization, but another organization that's trying to do similar things to what you're trying to do, that has blown up a little bit since September 10th of last year. Turning Point USA. It just had incredible challenges at being able to get things started on campuses because the administration, pushes back, and then students also push back and protest and things like that. There's a little bit less noise, I would guess, around Young Americans for Liberty. But nationally, like, Young Americans for Liberty is one of the bigger, I think, organizations on college campuses, right? That's helping push free thinking ideas. It's similar. It's interesting. I asked that question. I see you nodding. I'll take that as an answer. And, like when you first, because I was like, remind me what Young Americans for Liberty is. I should know this, right? And like as you're describing it, I was like, that's like Charlie Kirk 1.0, like what he was focused on. I mean, he shifted, and he was always a Christian, and I think he was always motivated in part by his faith. But I think he became more shifted toward the faith side of things as time went on. But his initial thing was more focused on the exact same issues that Young Americans for Liberty are focused on. And then he started dealing with like culture war issues, and then again also like Turning Point faith and stuff like that. But anyway, point is, this is you're one of the bigger organizations that's encouraging students in not only free markets but also free thinking, I think, right?
Oh, absolutely. Libertarianism as an ideology cannot exist without a marketplace of ideas.
Yeah. So when did you? So you're in your second year. When did you found Young Americans for Liberty, and what was the experience like working with the administration? I mean, again, Thomas, I think, from my experience working on college campuses over the years, Thomas is one of the more friendly to organizations like this, as opposed to other universities, which I won't mention.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised with how streamlined the process was for forming the organization here at Thomas. I actually did it at the end of my first year, because my second year is just starting now. And the hardest part was just getting it cleared by the board, and they were perfectly willing, but I had to wait for a session, so it took about a month waiting there. But we have full campus recognition now. We are a chaptered organization with Thomas College. We have access to all of Thomas College's resources, and I'm really thinking we have a very, very good ground to stand on to spread our message.
Yeah. And again, if in the event that you have, if I could stumble over my words, it would be great. So Jim Libby, former candidate for governor, he's a professor there, right?
Yeah. He's a economics and political science professor. I took one of his classes last semester.
Nice, good professor. You have to say.
Yeah, I like them. One thing I especially appreciate about, if I may go on a little side note.
Yeah.
One thing I especially appreciate about Dr. Libby is that he gives students the freedom to think. He provokes conversation. He doesn't tell you what you're supposed to believe. He instead wants you to talk about it and exchange ideas that way. And I think that really helps, especially in political learning.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think Jim was a great guy, but I knew you talked there, so I was wondering if you'd had the opportunity to interact with him. And yeah, so Thomas is a more like, it's a largely business focused university. I remember when I was a kid, one of the things that they were trying to get people to go to Thomas, or one of their their sales pitch was that like they had like 100% placement in business, after so you're going to get a degree and you're going to get a job, and so it shouldn't be too surprising that a university that's actually focused on making sure you can get a job after you graduate is a little bit more common sense, rather than the universities that just want you to come and be indoctrinated and take your money. Well, take government money, really, mostly. But anyway, yeah. So Thomas is a unique university. So what has your experience been like from students? How's the chapter grown? That kind of thing.
Reception's been pretty good from students. A lot of people are a lot more open to listening to our ideals when we, give them a platform to do so. It is such a relief to have like official chapter support here at Thomas, because they're just so accommodating for us. If we say, hey, we want a free speech event this place, they're like, okay, no one else is using it, go on ahead. And it's been great working with the student body here, because a lot of the students, there's actually a lot of people who have like libertarian or right-wing leanings, but are afraid to express those beliefs because they're worried it'll affect their academics. Like I had someone who approached me when I was tabling for Young Americans for Liberty and said he would love to sign up, but he wouldn't put his name anywhere because he was worried that one of his professors might see it and that might affect his performance in class. But here at Thomas, it's not too much of a problem, I can say, but we've had some people who've been concerned about ideological targeting. And I'm hoping that with Young Americans for Liberty becoming more popular here at Thomas, we can cut that out. we can make that no longer an issue.
Yeah, well, I think that's a really important point, because it's one of the biggest things that it's kind of a myth in a sense, right? Like, we believe that if we speak up, we'll lose opportunities. And the truth is, we will, right? There is a reality to that. I worked for, well, I don't know if 100% the case, but I think I could not, it would be challenging for me to get back into banking, because I've been so politically active and vocal about some issues that clash on cultural issues. Not economics. They don't care about economics, but it's the cultural issues in particular where you really, I think, bring about the anger and the frustration of the elites who are afraid. They're afraid of the mob is a big part of what it is. It's this game of social conditioning that they're conditioning us not to speak up and speak truth, because if we don't, then other people won't, and then everybody feels isolated and alone. They feel like they're the only person. That's why like one person standing up and speaking up makes a huge difference. Like just your presence and your willingness to do that, I'm sure even for people who, maybe they're still not willing to put their name on the list, there are other people that are now empowered by the fact that I'm not the only one. There's other people here that are trying to speak up for freedom, free thought, free markets, and civil liberties, individual liberties.
Yeah, and a big reason, that ideology is a big reason why I decided to start Thomas College Debate Night. It's a semester or bi-semester event, twice a semester, not once every other semester. where we just give people a platform to debate on these issues that they care about. I go up there a lot to debate because I have experience on debate. I was in the debate team at Waterville Senior High School. I'm NSDA certified, but also I just enjoy listening to people. I enjoy having people defend their ideas in a public forum, because I think inevitably, from my perspective, free market ideas win. When conversation is open, capitalism dominates. It's when conversation is closed and it's curated and only certain viewpoints are allowed to be expressed that authoritarianism starts to slip in, and that it becomes more palatable.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, if you think about the arguments of Marxism, right, which is basically you've got these are the two polar opposites, right? You've got free markets and then you've got Marxism, right? Marxism is on the rise, as the DSA, as you kind of mentioned earlier, which is just a short form way of saying communist, without having to say communist. Although some of them are getting more bold and are willing to say it. I was interviewing a girl earlier today who's a woman, I should say, young woman, who's running for city council in Bangor, where they have a communist on their city council. So there's that. So some of them are willing to say who they are. But most of them are hiding behind this Democrat Socialist of America nonsense, so I think I would be curious to hear your perspective on why you think that's on the rise in America, and how you've been able to, I think, maybe combat that thinking as you've engaged with your fellow students.
Well, a big reason why I think that Marxism has become more acceptable ideology among the younger crowd, especially, is because it's just it's been exposed to them more. It's what social media has been pushing. It's what the mainstream media has been alluding to. When they think of a source that they get their news from, it's what's there. That's their option. That's the news they're getting. They're getting Democratic Socialists of America. They're getting, your Zohran Mamdani's, your Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's. Those are the beliefs they're getting fed. And it's not to say that people are ignorant. I don't think they are. I think people inherently have good heads on their shoulders. But a lot of us just are busy. We have things we have to take care of. We have families, careers, and we don't have time to spend hours sifting through muddy waters. So for a lot of us, we just see what shows up. And for a lot of people, that's it. It's what shows up. Secondly, I think that the Democratic Socialists have one advantage, which is that they capitalized on empathy. There's a book that I've been meaning to read. I promise I've been meaning to read it. It's on my shelf. It's called Suicidal Empathy. And it's a fantastic book on the perspective of how we in the West have convinced ourselves that empathy and, providing everything with no cost is the ultimate virtue. That's what we need to strive for. Virtue signaling through social programs and welfare, when in reality, it's actually very detrimental to the survival of a functioning society. And I think that a lot of young people have been kind of siren-songed into subscribing to that belief because they want to be good people. They want to do good things. And this is what they're told through the mainstream media, this is the good way to think. This makes you good. And sorry.
Yeah, no. I mean, I absolutely agree. I had a guy who's actually a DSA guy who is in office. He's a rep out of Topsom. I had him on the podcast about a year ago, little over. It's interesting if you go want to go have fun. It was actually fun for me because he wanted to come on the podcast and tell me what he thought, and I was like, yeah, let's have a, free. I'm happy to have a conversation with somebody that I disagree with. So he would share his perspective and then I would share mine, and then we move on to the next topic. It was very polite and we got the ideas out there. But some of the ideas, what was interesting, if you hear his story, it's kind of like, I'm a Christian, right? And I hear people give their testimony about why they're Christians. It was kind of like that, but it was like his testimony of why he was a Democrat, or a Democrat socialist, essentially, or and it was interesting because he basically was like, I was a greedy Republican, didn't want anybody to steal my tax dollars, and then I decided that I actually cared about other people, and I became a Democrat. And it's like even in your testament, whatever you want to call it, your story, you're using manipulative language to twist. and make people feel like the Democrats are the good people that are trying to help people, and the Republicans only care about themselves. And to be fair, I think sometimes the way in which Republicans communicate, right, can be seen, especially if you're, younger people who haven't ever had to be in the situation of paying taxes, right? They're just sitting there struggling to get by. They're trying to find a job where and most of the money that they end up paying in taxes, they end up getting back when they do their taxes at the end of the year. And so they're like, people who are complaining about paying taxes have it good. It's kind of the perspective. And that's what they hear the Republicans talking about. And they're struggling. And so I think it's one of the reasons that the Democrats have been effective at manipulating is partly because of how we communicate, which I think I've been saying for a while, that Republicans need to stop saying, like, complaining about taxes and instead complain about misappropriation of funds, which, we've been seeing a lot of that through the Maine Wire reporting on the Medicare fraud. But I think it hits better. I think everybody's upset. Whether you pay taxes or not, you don't like that money that was designated to help people is actually being stolen by people who are creating, fraudulent companies or doing fraudulent billing. If you think that money should be spent on those services, you're upset that money was stolen, because that means that the people who are supposed to get it don't get it. And so I think it's a better tactic. But I think it's that manipulative language, as you kind of said, the toxic, you didn't say toxic, suicidal empathy. I've not read that. I have read Ali Beth Stuckey's Toxic Empathy. But either way, they're very manipulative in the way in which they communicate, but they're not winning arguments by, and this is their problem, right? Because they're not winning arguments with facts and statistics and reality, right? They're spinning a narrative, and the narrative is highly manipulative in trying to manipulate your emotions. Because if you look at why they feel the way that they feel, it's not based in reality. They'll talk about things like, harm reduction, right?
Yeah.
They use these like cute words like harm reduction. Like harm reduction ends up being more people ODing and dying dying from drug abuse and not escaping drug abuse while saying that you're trying to reduce harm. Like it's like nonsensical. It's like the narrative, harm reduction. Oh, that sounds good. I want to be part of harm reduction. I want people. But practically, in reality, their solutions don't help. So I'll shut up. But that's
No, I agree. It's Orwellian. If you've ever read Orwell's essays on the English language, in the manner they use doublespeak to communicate two completely separate ideas and somehow link them at the hip. Like, I think the biggest opposition I face when espousing free market ideas and discussing like capitalism as the most successful economic system in the world is just, well, don't you care about people? Don't you care about the poor, the disenfranchised? What about them? Capitalism creates the poor. How do you not care about them? Like, I do care about them. That's why I support capitalism, because everybody in a capitalist system has a chance to fulfill their own enterprise. You can succeed on your own without the need for an overarching tyrannical government to maybe give you bread this week.
Yeah. Well, my immediate thought when they're like, capitalism creates poor people is like, no, there are poor people in
There are poor people everywhere.
Like if you look at the economic systems that have existed in world history, there are poor people. And I usually like to say that they're in capitalism, you do have some people who have more and some people who have less, right? In socialism, you have shared poverty.
Well, you have shared poverty and a few political elites who have everything.
That's right. Correct. Yeah, that's the piece that was missing. Yes, 100%. So, so do you feel like there are people that you're able to convince on these campuses as you're having these conversations and these debates?
Yes, it is amazing what just confronting people's ideas head on and not getting caught up in the narrative spinning can do. Especially when you're in an environment like here, Thomas, where I feel like we can trust each other on a basic level. One of the best conversations I ever had with someone was with someone who leans more socialistically. And the one question that just kept destroying the argument was, how do we know how much to make? If the state controls the means of production, how does the state know how much to make? Oh, well, we ask people. Okay, do people necessarily know what they need right now? Like, am I going to know right now what I'm going to need a month from now at the supermarket? Not necessarily. But in a free market system, my purchasing speaks for myself. What I use my money on determines clearly what I need or what I desire. In a socialist system, you produce as much as the government produces as much as it decides it needs, and then oftentimes falls short on some things and then has surpluses of others. It's just completely nonsensical. There's an essay in one of the books I have over here. It's a book called The Libertarian Mind. There's a short excerpt from an essay that's taken where it discusses factory production and how the cogs of that work. It's a book called The Libertarian Mind by David Bose. I greatly recommend it. But yeah, I do find you're able to convince people if you can just get past the emotional rhetoric, if you can get past the don't you cares and the like you're standing up for the elite, not the poor. If you can get past that and really gripe with the ideas, you usually won't convince the person you're arguing with, but that's why you have an audience. Because one or two people in that audience, they're probably on the fence. They're not sure. Those people, those are the ones who you're going to get at your sign-up tables. Those are the ones who are going to show up at your rallies because you did something that no one else is willing to do. The mainstream media isn't willing to do. Be honest with them. Tell them straight up how things are and how things work. Get past all of that nonsense, that socialist jargon, and just look right at how the market works.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, use facts and statistics, right? Use the data, the real raw data that we have. One of the fun ones is, has there ever been a socialistic system that's actually worked? And the answer is no. Yeah. So why is it going to work this time? Oh, we've got this new idea. It's like, okay.
I was debating somebody at Thomas College debate night semester before last who tried to convince me that Cuba was a successful socialist state. So, no, it's not. By what metric?
It's so distressing how willfully ignorant, because I know you mentioned that some people out there aren't ignorant, they're just busy, right? Yeah. But then there are other people that are willfully ignorant
to ignore what's in front of them.
I'm a 49ers fan in football, and Colin Kaepernick, you may remember, was on the 49ers, and he had his whole like kneeling nonsense. But before that, or maybe it was during that same time, he wore like socks that were like Fidel Castro socks. And that game actually ended where there was a guy who had actually escaped Cuba, like took out, like didn't hurt him, injure him, but like just tackled him and I think forced him to fumble. I can't remember, but the game literally ended with him getting smashed by this guy from Cuba, and I thought that was pretty fitting. But yeah, people willfully speaking from ignorance. They have no idea what it's like. I mean, we have so many people. You hear all these stories. I read a book during COVID by a guy. I don't agree with all of his ideas, but this book was really good, and "Live Not by Lies" is what it was called, and it was basically. There were a ton of people. He's doing an investigation and talking to a bunch of people who were from families who had escaped, from Eastern Europe, socialism under the Iron Curtain, and made their way to America. And now they're looking around and they feel like they're seeing the same thing that they escaped starting to happen here. And so there's some principles on like how to resist in the midst of the things that are coming, which I think are really good. I think some of the other stuff that Rod Dreher is the title. I'm not on board with everything that he has to say, but I do really like that book in particular. But there are people who have lived through socialism are very frightened by what's happening, because even though the people who are trying to push it here are saying it's going to be different this time, it really isn't. It isn't. Socialism, it's like that's socialism, it's not communism. And it's like, what's the difference between socialism and communism? What's the difference between a seed and a plant?
The stage of life. It's really
right. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Socialism is the road to communism. That's the inevitable endpoint.
Yeah. And capitalism, not only has capitalism like created economic prosperity here in America, but through America to the rest of the world. Like I think some arguments have said that like America, that before America's boon, like, I don't know the exact numbers, but there are a lot of people in poverty around the world. And now, like, it's brought, I can't remember if the numbers were like 95% of people are not globally as a result of America's economic boon founded on capitalism. Now we do, I think, struggle in a current environment. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. We didn't prepare to debate, but I think that I believe in capitalism. I believe in a free market, but I also believe that inappropriate, like, kind of seatbelts, and so things like antitrust laws, I think, are actually good, right? And I think part of the problems that we're seeing here, and part of what the left and the socialists are blaming on capitalism, is actually what some people would call crony capitalism, or the more pessimistic people will call late stage capitalism. In other words, this is where it always goes, they want to say, although I don't think they have the evidence to prove that. They just want to say it. But where you have like major corporations, where I like to focus on the fact that, like, you basically, if you're watching this, you're either using one or a combination of these three different companies' products, which is Microsoft, Apple, or Google, right? If you're watching this or listening to this, it's on one of those devices, right? And so, like, they have a oligopoly, not necessarily a monopoly, but an oligopoly, similar to an oligarchy, but not government, more, economic. Of kind of control over that, because they're allowed to buy up all their would-be competitors and ensure that they maintain market share. And I think that a lot of the problems that exist in the current economic situation here in America are kind of partly built on that, and I think partly built on the combination of Clinton, Bush, Obama. Clinton for free trade, Bush for let's give tax breaks to the wealthy corporations that they'll then invest in their employees. And they're like, yeah, but we're actually going to take that money and build factories overseas, and then Obama in really substantially, primarily through Obamacare, increasing regulation in America, making it much more expensive to be able to employ people here. The combination of those things pushing so many of the like jobs that Trump is trying to bring back now overseas. I think that is another factor. But these are the things that I think, corporations being able to basically have, joint monopolies in industry and not being held in check by the laws that should hold them in check.
Yeah, no, I actually broadly agree with your points. The only contention I would have is that I think that a lot of antitrust laws, they're solutions to a symptom, not to the root cause. The root cause would be government corporation collusion. All these subsidies we're providing these large corporations. In good faith, a lot of the time we want to promote business here in the United States. We want more factories here. But the flip side of that is that those corporations gain a lot more comparative advantage over their competitors unfairly without the influence of the market. So we have a lot of companies like Apple who, after the financial crisis, received a bunch of government subsidies. Companies like Microsoft, which, Bill Gates has worked part and parcel with members of the government in the past, unfortunately. Yeah. But it's easy to see when the reverse of that relationship, where I agree with antitrust laws as a cure to a symptom, but I would rather we just cut the corporations out of government and, on the flip side, cut the government out of the market.
It's true. Most of these companies have large contracts with the federal government, it directly or indirectly, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that creates. I'd be interested to play around with some of how that might work out, but at the moment we've got maybe addressing some of the antitrust stuff would be effective. But I hear what you're saying. Yeah. Anyway, I got to think about that some more. Yeah. See, I have an open mind. I'm confident, but also have an open mind. I'm interested in hearing other potential solutions. But yeah, so nice. So how many, so you have your debate nights, twice a year. What else are you guys doing on campus to encourage more people to think freely and about free markets?
Well, and this is something that I actually talked with Mr. Servinius about, which is making events that aren't necessarily politically charged with Young Americans for Liberty's backing. It's very hard to convince people to go to a seminar about the Ron Paul Revolution and the Federal Reserve and how much money is being skimmed from the average consumer. But it's very easy to convince people to go to karaoke night. And then at the beginning, you just say a couple words about Young Americans for Liberty, have a table out back and more information that they can then follow up on. And it's created, to me, an environment where people don't like to be preached to. Broadly, I find a lot of the people who aren't already willfully ignorant listening to the mainstream media, their bullcrap detectors are flying off on all cylinders whenever they start being preached to about politics. They want honest, on the level conversation, and so they don't want to go to an event where they feel like they're just going to be spoken to, and that's it. They want time is a finite resource. They want to use it the best they can. They want to go out and do something fun. And then those same people, a lot of them have been having these thoughts for a while. And if you say like, hey, we're Young Americans for Liberty's here, we're sponsoring this event. We have a table out back to follow up with, we're going to discuss like free market ideas and I'll talk about this in a minute, but an SRC campaign we're running here on campus. If you'd love to learn more, we'd love to, talk to you about it. It comes off a lot more intellectually honest. I lost the flag, but I think that comes off a lot better to people. And so that's how we've been marketing our events. We're going to be running things like bingo nights, karaoke nights, pool tournaments. And just as a backing, we're going to have Young Americans for Liberty standing firm on those principles at all those events. We are going to have a couple more conventional, like political events, like seminars. We have debate night that in its nature gets political, but we want to make libertarianism more accessible. We want people to feel like these ideas aren't just, you have to be in the know, you have to know everything about it to really embrace liberty as a core, that it's just something we can all agree upon and have fun doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you said you'd mention there's another thing that you were going to talk more about?
So here at Thomas College, we have a policy on non-lethals that me and my constituents with Young Americans Liberty think is absurd, in that you can't have
non-lethals.
I'm sorry?
What is it? On what?
Non-lethals, like pepper sprays, tasers, self-defense tools, not allowed here. We think that's absurd, especially in recent news. There was a story last semester of someone who had to use a non-lethal self-defense implement, a can of pepper spray, in self-defense against a male attacker. They were a female. And so we think that clearly shows there is a need for these things to be allowed for the student body. And so we're going to be launching an SRC campaign, student rights campaign, to have the administration change their policy. And the way we're going to market it, obviously very conventionally, but one thing I really want to do is just show to people how what we would consider a basic right, a right to self-defense, is so easily denied if we just don't pay attention to it, if we just ignore it. Then I think it was Ronald Reagan who said that liberty is never more than one generation away from extinction. And it's that idea that I think it's important to convey with things like student rights campaigns and advocacy, is that you need to be mindful of what your rights are and how those rights are being whittled away.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I think sometimes we think about too often about the big things that we feel like we need to address, whereas that's something that is addressable. I think you can get broad support for. Like, who is arguing against that?
Yeah. Like, we don't even know, like, everybody we've talked to at Thomas supports non-lethal carry. We're like, why is this policy in place? Why do we oppose it at this point?
I wonder if it's insurance companies.
It might be. It's such a pain, but
can we so if there's an insurance policy that the insurance companies don't allow a university to have insurance with them if they're going to allow this type of stuff, and then somebody gets raped, do they get to sue the insurance company?
I think you should be able to. I'm not sure the legality on that works out.
We got to figure that out, because insurance companies annoy me so much. Absolutely. Because unfortunately, we talk about free market, right? There's so many fewer of them because of consolidation in the market, and therefore a few who just decide that they're not going to take on a certain type of risk that people have been taking on for a long time, and now all of a sudden nobody will take it on because you've got a bit of a cabal, determining and basically forcing people, because for so many things, especially if it's related to a house, but if you're a university or a college system, you have to you have to have insurance. You're not allowed. There's no way around it. And so they basically force people into doing what they want them to do simply by saying we're not going to cover you for that, knowing that nobody else is going to cover you for that because we basically coordinated with them. And so this is a way that insurance companies get to manipulate people into doing what they want them to do, which I'm not a fan of.
I can't say I am either. I think every time I've had to deal with an insurance company, it has been comparable to visiting the DMV. It has been a long wait for a whole lot of nothing.
Yeah, I got into an accident, just to crap on insurance companies for a moment. I got into a car accident that was not my fault. It totaled my car and I had some injuries, and then they send out these smarmy people who are just like, ooh, we're going to trick this college student into taking basically nothing, even though if he held out, he could, get a decent chunk of change.
Yeah.
And I fortunately knew a lawyer, and I was like, I'll hear what they have. So they were going to give me enough money, to fix my car or whatever, replace my car, and $250. And I was like, try again.
Yeah.
And so I ended up getting a lawyer and having to work through it. But a lot of people would not know anyway. But it's insurance companies. I do like insurance for certain things, but I think there are some problems with the insurance industry. But yeah, either way, the point going back to, I could rail against insurance companies for a long time. So we'll move on from that and just focusing on a real issue that is, we'll talk about nonpartisan, because again, Young Americans for Liberty are not necessarily a partisan organization, although I would assume that they align more with the non-socialists, obviously.
Yeah.
Which means that they're not Democrat, but my point is that they're not necessarily they're a nonprofit organization technically.
I believe so.
Yeah, so they're focused on education, on those issues
Advocacy
of liberty.
and education.
Yeah. So, but regardless of where you come from, the issue that you're looking to address is one that I think everybody, for the most part, would be on the same page on. We want women who can be vulnerable in certain situations to be able to have a way to defend themselves against a stronger male who's trying to do something to them. So why would we not support this?
Yeah.
So it's great. It's awesome. So any other fun things that you guys are doing on campus? And are you the only Young Americans for Liberty in Maine at this point, I'm assuming?
I believe EMCC has a chapter as well, run by a phenomenal leader named Aiden Hofsess. I don't know if you've ever met him or heard of him, but he's a fantastic leader here in the state of Maine when it comes to college Republicans and Young Americans for Liberty. He's been a pleasure to work with, and I believe he's going to start running his chapter in EMCC.
Awesome. That's awesome. Really excited to hear that. I mean, again, I think one of the things that's necessary in order for us to save our republic, which I think this is the place that we're at. You quoted, I think it was Reagan, about every generation is every country's only every one generation away from destruction, essentially. I don't know if I misquoted it, but that's the point. But one of the things that I'm reminded of is when I think it was in 2020, I was looking for hope, right? And I ended up reading this book about the French underground during World War II. And I was surprised to learn that the French underground was actually run by teenagers.
Yeah.
Because the parents, this will sound very similar to the society that we're currently in, right? The parents were afraid to do anything because they would be harmed, and so and their families would be negatively impacted. So they were afraid to do anything. But the teenagers were like, no, this is wrong, and they were organizing stuff behind the scenes. I think one of the most significant characters was actually a blind guy, but it was the youth is the point that I'm getting at. And so I think the answer to how we fix our country has to start with the youth. And so I'm excited to see younger people stepping up wherever they may be, And so I just want to thank you for doing that and kind of sticking your neck out a bit, because it's even on a more favorable campus like Thomas College, young people tend to skew more to the left and to believe more in socialistic ideology. Even the ones who might say that they don't, when you look at specific issues, you sometimes find, oh, they say they're not, but when we get into it practically, they're like, yeah, we need a social safety net. We can't take that away from people. They have needs, right? And I there are questions in my mind about whether or not the government needs to be the social safety net, since the government F's up everything that they do. Maybe we could have a social safety net that doesn't come from them.
If I may quote Ronald Reagan again, the 9 scariest words to ever hear are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help."
That's exactly right. Yes. We do love Reagan. Yeah, he had some great quotes. He's a very great speaker and communicator. And yeah, so like I think that but people get concerned because what are the implications? There might be this person who might, and all of a sudden we end up crafting policy, and this is where we get that helps a few people and hurts a lot of people, and somehow we think we've done something good. Like here in Maine, where they passed that Family Medical Leave Act, and their argument was, what about that single mom who? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, should we be structuring society in a way that we only concern ourselves with a single mom who is in a really tough situation, and then has how do you anyway? I shouldn't say certain things. I'll get myself in trouble. But a single mom who's having a baby. How did that happen? Who's involved in that situation? I feel like there's somebody else that should be helping.
Someone else who's sort of burden a bit more than the taxpayer.
Right. And so we end up saying, okay, there's a few people who are going to be positively impacted by this, a bunch of people who are going to take advantage of it, and a bunch of businesses are going to have to close because of it. But it's worth it for those few, right? Rather than looking at things globally and saying, what is going to create the best overall society and make things lead to the most human flourishing. That should be what we're focused on. But people get manipulated by the suicidal empathy that you mentioned earlier. So anyway, it's great to have you out there fighting. And if people so obviously you're running that organization and getting that up and running and doing some fun things. And how is there a way for people to be able to follow and see what you guys are doing on campus through social media?
We're going to start a YAL Thomas College page soon. We need a social media coordinator. I'm going to be honest, I'm no good with computers.
Yep.
So I try to find people who, comparative advantage, find people with specific skills who can exert those skill sets the best in their roles. But we will be starting a YAL Thomas College social media page. We're going to have Instagram, I know, and we're probably going to look at a Facebook page as well. Okay. That's social media is probably the best bet broadly. Nice. I mean, if anybody wants to get in contact with us here at Thomas, I would be happy to get in contact with anyone in particular. You can, I don't know if I can link an email address somewhere, but I'd be happy to. I think you have my email address.
Yeah. If anyone wants to reach out to me, I can get that, pass that on to you. Yep. That would be great. Yeah. Well, I just really encouraged about what you're doing. Again, we need young people standing up and speaking up and creating opportunity. It's a large part of it is just creating that space to be able to have conversation, to be able to make people realize that it's okay to not agree with the radical leftists. It's okay to think about maybe they might be wrong, right? And I think just sometimes we think bigger than we need to, rather than thinking about what's something actionable that we can actually do that can make a difference. And especially as Republicans, we're always thinking about like, where are we today? What do we need to do to win this year, rather than how do we plan for the future? That's one area where I feel like the Republican Party, it needs to get a little bit better at. But thank you for the work that you're doing, and thank you for coming on and talking about it. Anything else you'd like to share before we go?
Off the top of my head, no, nothing I can really think of. I think I've covered everything I really want to talk about, but I do want to thank you so much again for letting me come on the show. It's always an honor to be able to talk on shows like this, and especially a show that I know because I've watched a couple of your episodes in the past, and it's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, once again, I'm just excited to see more young people engaging, and appreciate you taking the time to share with the people of Maine about the fact that there are organizations that are working on our campuses here in Maine to be able to help people think freely and to think differently than, again, they've been indoctrinated by the schools, and, to detox people from bad thinking. And so thank you for doing that.
If anybody wants to get involved in the liberty movement who's in the Thomas College area, feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to put in a word for you, get you started with Young Americans for Liberty. If you're in New England broadly, shout out to John Rogers. He's our regional director. Great guy, fantastic, very fun guy. I can get you in contact with him, get you started wherever you are. There's chapters for the Northeast, at least. There's chapters all the way from Maine to Ohio. So anyone within that range, I can get you right to your guy.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Robert. And thank you all for watching. We'll be back here. Well, I'll be recording a couple of podcasts over the course of the next couple of days and releasing them over time. I don't think they'll be live, but there are more to come. So thank you all, and we'll see you later.
Chris, have a good day.